Want to plan your next fishing trip without the hassle? FishingBooker.com is the best way to find and book a fishing charter anywhere in the world. Whether you're chasing trophy fish or just looking for a family day on the water, Fishing Booker makes it simple, fast, and secure. With thousands of experienced guides, verified reviews, and 24/7 customer support, Fishing Booker takes the guesswork out of planning. Visit FishingBooker.com and book your trip today. Fishing Booker. Fishing trips made easy.
Thursday Night Football is on, and it's only on Prime Video.
Wide open, touchdown!
This week, the Dallas Cowboys and Detroit Lions face off in a high-octane clash.
Look at this, it's on the money.
Coverage begins at 7 p.m. Eastern with football's best party. TNF Tonight, presented by Verizon. Not a Prime member? Not a problem. Simply sign up for a 30-day free trial. It's the Cowboys and Lions, Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern, only on Prime Video. Restrictions apply. See Amazon.com/Amazon Prime for details.
Welcome to DSC's Campfires with Larry Weissoon, a unique blend of hunting, fishing, wildlife conservation, and the outdoor lifestyle. DSC's Campfires is brought to you by DSC, Conservation, Education, and Advocacy. Hornady, accurate, deadly, dependable. Taurus, award-winning revolvers and pistols. Stealth Vision, high-tech, precision-driven equipment for today's modern hunter. Vineyard Max, deer attractants created for the aroma of success, game feeders, and other hunting products. Red 55 Winery, signature wines from Emmy Award-winning country artist Miranda Lambert, owned by Rick and Beverly Lambert. And the Choctaw Hunting Lodge, home of some of the finest hunting in North America. Now, here's Larry.
Dr. Mike Arnold, welcome to the Campfire. Now, before you say anything, I need to tell everybody that Dr. Mike Arnold is the DSC Foundation's Educator of the Year for 2026. Congratulations, my friend.
Oh, my goodness. Your listeners need to hear that what my wife said was when I read a note from you that told me that she said, I've never seen you speechless before. and she's known me for 50 years, so that's saying an awful lot. What a special honor. My family, I consider DSC my family, and to have this kind of an honor from y'all, from the Dallas Safari Club, I can't even, once again, speechless. I can't imagine that they couldn't find somebody better. Let's just put it that way.
I'll tell you what, they could have searched the world over many times and not found anyone more deserving than you for that award. I'm thrilled to see you receive it, and I know DSC Foundation feels the same way. You've done so much in terms of education, not just from a professional perspective of being a professor and the research and things that you've done and the students that you've influenced, but your outdoor writing and the talks, the many talks that you do to groups where you do mention hunting as opposed to a lot of other people and how important it is. That has really had an impact on so many people, and I know we'll continue to do so. We're going to end this today. I want to talk about your bringing back the wild book, but I have to tell you right now, I am so jealous. I'm almost, I hate to use the term envious, but if I use the term envy, it would be green with envy over the trip that you and Miss Francis just did to Scotland. Tell me I want to know every little detail about that hunt or that trip.
Well, yeah, so we hunted with Royal Outfitters UK, and it's Joe Crude is the owner-operator of that, and we hunted with Martin, who was our guide. He's a Latvian, and the first time I've hunted with a Latvian who came to Scotland and has a Glaswegian accent. It was the funniest thing in the world. We gave him a hard time the whole time. Sort of had this Russian Glasgow thing going. So, but anyway, it was, so we organized it, like I say, through Royal Outfitters UK. We had hunted Francis and I had hunted with Joe one time before for Chinese water deer and muntjac in southern England, and we really appreciated how he ran his outfit and enjoyed it. So anyway, we organized this in Scotland. Now, what I should have done was listen to Mr. Whitetail before I went over and understood that I was probably too darn old to make this trip, that it was going to be, no. And so you warned me that the Scottish Highlands are not your driving around in a pickup on an elevated seat kind of hunt. And no. So, but I tell you what, it was a magical trip, and it is though one of the toughest hunts I've done. The only other one if folks have hunted there, the analogous situation for me was a black bear hunt, a spot and stalk black bear hunt I did in the Selway River drainage in Idaho.
Oh my gosh!
But that was when I was a lot younger. We hiked over rough terrain every day, and like I say, it was magical. I love tough hunts. I love tough hunts. I know you do too. And the fact of the matter is, if we hadn't gotten any animals to see that. Oh my goodness, you know it because you were there before I was, but to see that countryside, it is some of the most beautiful country I've ever seen in my life. And to see the wildlife that's there, lots and lots of red stags. I mean, we ran into tons of red stags in their territory every day. It was during the rut, so they were roaring. They had their hinds. Yeah, we heard them roaring and saw them tending their hinds. So that's sort of how we got there. And what happened was, I had 3 species that I was interested in. I wanted to get one of those nasty old hill stags, not the ones that you see on estates. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm not complaining about big antlers or anything, but I wanted a hill stag that had made it through. They had limited nutrition up there. They don't grow the size antlers that folks are probably used to seeing in some magazines, but they grow nice antlers, and they get old, and they battle, and they're just great old warriors. And they still do crown. I wanted one, if I could possibly get one that had that crowning that we see in, what is it, Larry? Probably Roosevelt elk that people might.
I think Roosevelt elk are probably the only ones that do have the crowning of our North American elk or elk type species. Right.
And so it's like that because elk are related to red stags. They're closely related to red stags. And so anyway, our first hunting, I actually got a younger red stag for their larder. They do a huge meat business there, and they harvest. I'm doing an article right now called "Hunters Solve Human Wildlife Conflict in Scotland and the Scottish Highlands," and it has to do with the forestry industry. They need, in their plantations and those seedlings, they need to keep them from being all cropped off. So there's this balance that hunters help them keep. So we got a younger stag for the larder as well as for control. But then we went after, in a tougher area, we went after a big stag, one that was tending hinds, one that was roaring and that sort of thing. And we got him. But it took I know you've taken longer shots at this, but I made the longest shot on a game animal was 440 yards with the guides. I was using an R8 that the guide had, and a very accurate rifle, and it was one shot. And he went down, and it's and then we had the dirt and photographs. You've seen them. I sent them to you.
Oh, fabulous photographs.
Backdrops. Yeah, well, that's my wife. You know what? The editor of a magazine, I won't name Diana Rupp's name.
No, or Sports Appeal.
or Sports Appeal once said to me, oh man, your writing on this article is great, but your photos are terrible. Frances wasn't there, right? And I said, no,
Yes.
no ma'am, she wasn't.
She knew.
So anyway, so we got him, and there were two other species we were interested in, and both of them are fairly few and far between. They're scarce on the ground in these areas, and that was a roebuck, and that was a Sika, especially the Sika, and they got me into both, and we ended up with a beautiful 3x3 roebuck. And just a beautiful, mature animal. And then we got a Sika who was old as the hills, but he was what they call a royal Sika.
Yes.
He had 8 points. Royal is as large as they get there. They're genetically, even in their native Japan, they probably don't get more than 8 points, although maybe you could get a 10-point occasionally. But, so we got him, and he was on next to the last day, I guess, we got him, and it was up in beyond the back of everywhere again, but right up against another lock, they call their lakes locks.
Yes.
And it was just like, everything really did conspire to even make me look halfway decent in those photos. So it was okay. Somebody asked me, would I go back? And I said, in a heartbeat.
Oh, absolutely. You mentioned the beauty of that land, and I think in terms of stark beauty, because, there's not a whole lot of trees in some of those areas, particularly up in the Highlands, but the colors that are there and the undulation of that land just absolutely makes it, to me, very starkly beautiful when you get right down to it. Now, I need to know about the Sika, because when I was there, we hunted Sika and roe deer. Unfortunately, the only Sika deer that I saw was a hind, and I think I saw maybe one roe deer doe. Of course, we were there at a little bit different time, but were they also rutting or roaring at the time?
Well, and they whistle. You probably know that.
Yes,
they
whistle. Right.
They were coming up the slope. In fact, we tried to call them in the day before. Martin he had his own calls, and we positioned ourselves in an area where he had seen some. Actually, with Dan Cabela. Dan was there filming. Yeah, Dan had been filming a couple of shows there, a couple of his episodes there, and they had seen a Sika in this area when Dan was with Martin and Joe. And so anyway, we whistled. He whistled, and sounds just, to me, it's very similar to an elk cow whistle. That's what it sounds sort of like to me. What my remembrances of that. But anyway, so we whistled. As we're going up the slope, and Mike's trying not to hawk up a lung when we're hunting them the day that I actually got one. You shush. You know darn good well.
No,
we were just praying that they would. Well, someone asked me, what did you, my guide said, am I going to have to carry you down the mountain? I said, no, I have medicine for this sort of stuff. But I said, you ought to see how well I shoot if I'm not high on opioids. But, and he looked at me, and Francis said, one of these days, one of these guys is going to take you serious. And I said, yeah, I know. But anyway, we're going up the slope, and he pointed at his ear, and Francis and I had heard it too. We heard one whistle. And it's probably the one I got. There may have been another one because there was a set of hinds, and then as we came up, this big Sika, he was massive for that area, was out at about, I think it was about 250 yards is where I took him. But one of the things, so we saw another bull as he has dressed this guy out. We've taken our photographs, and Martin raised his binocular up to his eyes and said, do you want another bull? And I knew he was pulling my leg, and I said, I saw the white, they have that big white lump. It's big white.
They do.
Their whole lump is, sort of reminds you of once again, an elk, but a big white. It's just starkly white. And and he was up by the forest. And I said, yeah, how far is he? He said 400 and some odd yards. And I said, I think I'll let him walk. You know, we weren't going to shoot another bull. But he had just sat there. I mean, they're hard as heck to find. You know, these are you've seen it in whitetails. You know, you work and you work and you work and you slave and you try to find these darn things. And then we have one doddering around that acts like, oh, you know, no big deal. And we could have shot a second one, I suppose. But one thing to biology, let me nerd out on you a bit. And
please do.
Just for a moment, one of the things that Martin showed us as we're going down, after we've taken the bull, we're heading for him. And we cross this little slough. And it's a little dip, and there's this little stream coming, or not a stream, but it's just a stagnant water there, basically.
Right.
But in Scotland, nothing stagnant, really. But
no.
So he said, "You see this?" And it was filled full of. It was this little pool-like thing that was filled full of shredded vegetation from around it. And the Sika bulls tear the vegetation up and put it in these areas. And it's a wallow for them. Mm-hmm. And so they urinate in it and all this, but it's not a muddy wallow. It's this green, it looks like something a vegetarian would eat. You know, it's this green stuff.
Right.
Soup-like stuff, and that's what they roll in. And that's what they, you know, show their dominance by tearing up the vegetation and scooping it into this thing, and then they have this wallow. Anyway, I thought that was because it's so different from the red stags who have the normal, normal elk wallow with the mud and the nasty and water and stuff like that. So I didn't know that about them, but that's what they do.
Here in Texas, I've seen them, you know, where they had been laying in the water, and I assumed that the area that we were in was pretty rocky, and so what water was there was relatively clear, or maybe a little bit of mud stirred up, you know, just a little bitty mud. But obviously that was a result of probably partially that, but also what you just addressed as to how they set up their wallows. Because I've never seen one that was muddy, even down here in Texas. But I've seen them to where, you know, they were pretty much wet on the lower half, well, pretty much most of their body, but except for their upper back and head kind of thing. Interesting.
Yeah, it is interesting. I, you know, once again, I'm a nerd. I said to Francis, we got to take a lot of photos. And Martin's like, shouldn't we get to the bull? And I'm like, we'll get there, but we got to.
Well, I love that kind of thing. Like you, whenever I'm out, I want to learn every little bit that I can about a particular species, the habitat that's there, you know, and of course the culture of the hunting as well too, which you have so aptly covered in so many different places. But that's really interesting. And you're right. I've seen, you know, there's several different subspecies of the Sika or Sika as they call them here in Texas, but I think the vast majority of those that are in Europe were originally brought over from Japan and that area. And I think it's their scientific name is Cervus nippon, if I remember correctly. And then I think there's some subspecies from there. But I've had a chance to hunt them. They're in Texas. Hunted them there a little bit in Scotland. Of course, didn't do any good. But you're right. You very seldom, if ever, unless there's a freak that happens in terms of when the antlers are being developed, that they ever develop more than 4 points per side. And to take one with 4 points per side is just phenomenal, quite frankly. But then this is the same hunter I'm talking to who shot red and gray brocket deer on the same trip. So you know what? I'm not surprised. When you tell me you were going after 3 animals, I'm going, oh my God, I hope Dr. Mike kills at least one of those. And then I got thinking about, nope, that rascal is going to come home and I'll be sending me pictures of roe deer, red stag, and Sika deer. And you did. What about the roe deer hunt? Because, you know, those are one of my very favorite animals on earth.
Oh, man. You know what? I've already organized, so you've hunted them a bunch. I've only hunted them twice now, once in Sweden and now once in Scotland. And while I was there, before I got the one in Scotland, I was already organizing a trip to go to Latvia with these same guys. They're opening up some hunting there. Yeah.
Oh.
So and so just to mention, if you're ever interested, I'll put you in contact because they're going to, apparently the Latvian system, if I can digress for just a second, I want to write about it in this next book that I'm working on and some magazine articles, but the Latvian system is hunting clubs. And you have to have a certain, darn it, I'm going to forget. I've got it written in my notebook, but I didn't look at it. You have to have a certain number of contiguous acres before you can have a hunting club. And it's a lot of acreage, okay?
Yes.
But the hunting in Latvia is through hunting clubs. And Martin is a member, longstanding member of this hunting club that his dad, I think, was in, and probably his granddad.
Yes, sir.
And
yes,
so
that's right.
it's an have you been to Latvia? Because I've never been there. So
no,
okay.
No, but
and so they're going to go do this, and the first animal they're going to open up, the Royal Outfitters are going to open up with, are roebuck, because they can do it outside of their. They can hunt moose and things, lots of other things there, but those are during their seasons in Scotland, right? So initially they're going to avoid those by hunting, because you can hunt roebuck, darn it, I'm going to forget these dates too, maybe May to, I don't know when
Yes, I think that's right. I know a lot of the seasons in the European countries open up in May.
Okay. That must be when their antlers are formed, right? Already hard and
yes,
stuff
sir.
like that.
That's about the time when they've just rubbed off the velvet and they're in hard antlers.
Yeah. So anyway, the roebuck hunt in Scotland, once again, they said, look, I will tell your listeners, I got a roe doe. They wanted one for their larder, and for some other things that they were doing. So I collected her, and we had her, but we had seen quite a few roe doe. I mean, we really had. Yeah, we saw quite a few, but I only harvested one. They asked me if I wanted to, because they really do need to keep their larder going. And I said, no, I mean, I appreciate that. And if y'all need to take some, feel free. That's not a problem for me. But anyway, we saw a bunch of roe doe, but we saw one buck, and that's the one we got. That was, so I'm not, I guess my point is that, they really were few and far between, but we were going through this area that we had hunted before, for roebuck, and, we were working our way through it. They work plantations, tree plantations. The forestry industry there is huge, and it's fir trees is what they have planted there for most of their plantations. I mean, it's a billions and $billion industry every year, and we're making our way through. And Martin said, "There's a roe deer over there," and he looked through his binocular, dropped him immediately, and said, "That's a buck." And he was laying down behind a log. And, of course, Mike can't find him. I mean, there's no way in Hades I'm going to see this darn thing laying behind a log. Mike can't find his own backside with both hands most of the time when I'm out in the hunting. Shush, you've hunted with me. You know darn good and well that's true.
Oh, you're a great exaggerator.
I'm going to look 180 degrees the wrong way. So anyway, so I'm looking, and I get set up on the Harris bipod. We get me settled. He gets the rifle in the general direction. Can you see him? I said, nope. And then the little guy just stood up, and I saw him move. And as I'm squeezing the shot off, I put the crosshairs on. We only had a couple of seconds between, he stood up and I took the shot, but I could see him crouching. He was about to bound, and Martin was watching him in his binocular. And he said after the little guy just went like 15 feet and fell over, he said, "You darn near missed," he didn't say darn, but he said, "You almost missed that animal." And I said, not missed as in the shot, but he said he was about to go. And I said, I saw his crouch. I saw him, but he was just getting ready to spring. I said, but you didn't give me many seconds. He said, well, it worked out fine. But he didn't. I said, he said, did you see his antlers? And I said, Martin, you told me he was a buck, and I never looked at his antlers. I never looked at his antlers. I don't do that when a guide says that's the animal. I have to concentrate on where I'm going to shoot. And so he said, well, he's a buck. He said, I don't know how big he is. And we got up there, Martin looked at it, and he said, all right. He said, this is not guide speak. He said, I've been guiding for many years here. This is the largest buck I've ever taken with a client. And
oh my gosh, my goodness.
But of course, he said what he said though was, he said, I'll tell you, for this area, this is the best buck I've ever seen. But he said in Latvia and other places like that, they get bigger. And I said, well, he is all the buck I ever want. I don't really, I could get smaller. I really don't, worry. But he's just beautifully symmetrical.
Oh,
he's just a beautiful 3x. Yeah, he's just real pretty. His coloration of his antlers. And so I sent Frances. She was not with us that day, but we still took really nice photos. I want to brag for a moment.
I'm impressed. I thought surely she took them.
Martin. No, it was because Martin's a good photographer. I want you to hush. So, but anyway, I sent a photo to Frances, and I said, all right, Martin wants to know, European mount or shoulder. And she wrote back and said, he's too pretty. You got to do a shoulder mount. So
yes,
I said, yes, ma'am, he sure is. So I love European mounts from European animals, I have to admit.
Yes.
But some, like him, the Sika, I don't know if your listeners have ever looked at the face of a Sika. I hadn't even looked at photographs really of them. I knew what they sort of looked like.
Right.
Frances, when she looked in the face of that Sika, she said, he looks sinister. And if you look in the face of a Sika and you look at them face on, the way that their skull and their skin is put together, they look like they have a serious frown on. It's the most interesting darn thing I've ever seen in my life.
They do. I've hunted them and shot them in New Zealand, and of course hunted them here in Texas, and they really do. They do have a sinister look. I never really didn't think about it until you just mentioned it, but as you were talking, I started remembering the ones that I'd shot, and you're exactly right.
Well, Frances said that one has to be a shoulder mount, but they have to make sure he's got that sinister look on his face. I said, well, I'll talk to the taxidermist, sweetheart.
There you go.
I don't know how to do that. But anyway, so that was our trip. But I got to tell you, when somebody asked me, what are you looking, before we went, what are you really looking forward to? And I said, you're going to kill me because I'm a crazy hunter, passionate hunter. And they said, what do you mean? I said, we're getting to ride on the Harry Potter train.
Oh my gosh.
we got the Jacobite. He got us tickets for the Jacobite trade, which is the one that you see if you've ever watched Harry Potter movies. It goes across that aqueduct and their flying car goes in and out. That's the train. So anyway,
I'll be darned.
No. My point actually here is, and we visited some rundown castles and some the Duke of Argyle's castle and stuff on a couple of days too. And my point is for folks, and Larry knows this, you know this, but if you have a non-hunter, my wife's a non-hunter. She loves history just like I do. She loves, things, side trips and stuff. You can take yourself to Europe. You can go out, like I said, the Roebuck Day. Frances was in Glasgow, and she was visiting museums and things like that. Your non-hunting folks will have an amazing time in Europe. They will just absolutely eat it up. And if you're hunters and you like history and things, which I love, then you're going to experience hunts of a lifetime too. Don't get me wrong. I love Africa. I love all the places I get to go, but boy, Europe sure checks a lot of boxes.
I agree with you totally on all accounts. I can talk about going on a hunting trip, and my wife, Marianne, goes, okay, yeah. And I can say I am going to go to Austria, Scotland, England, Great Britain, wherever in Europe. And she goes, you're not going without me. So, and I love that because, as you mentioned, I love the history I remember hunting in England, not far from the Castle Corfe, I think it's kind of south and east, I think, maybe of London. It was the only castle that was never conquered, and they finally ended up burning it. But I remember walking down trails where, in visiting with the local folks that I was there, they said, these are the same trails that the knights rode their horses and walked on. The very same ones. And, you know, you let your mind wander a little bit, and you can hear all kinds of sounds and see all kinds of sights that, you know, your mind creates for you, knowing a little bit about the history of that area. And to me, that is one of the beauties, absolutely, of hunting Europe. I've got 2 trips coming up, provided we can get there on airlines in the early part of next year. One will be to England to hunt, as you did, the Chinese water deer and a muntjac. And then we sold a hunt at DSC Foundation, through Scandinavian Pro Hunters for a 3-nation roe deer hunt where we'll start in Sweden and run to Poland. And then we'll actually end up in England for the last one. So, I'm really looking forward to those hunts. I got to go back. I heard you say something. The new book you're working on. What are you working on now? Because I want to come back to the other. I love your writings. I love what you write about. What's this new book? What have you started on there? What's going on?
Well, there's a lot of material. Once again, it'll have obviously my moniker given to me by my agent a long time ago was hunter scientist. So what I would like, I have one of 2 directions that I'll end up going. My plan is to try to put out a book about every 2 years so that this one that we'll talk about, Bringing Back the Wild, that's my 6th book. 4 of them were science books that I wouldn't wish on anybody unless they were a specialist, because that's according to my wife. But I loved writing them, and I had a great came out through Oxford University Press, but they are really good sleep motivators for most folks. So I had those 4, and then, you know, I put out 2 that are really meld my passion for hunting and conservation together, as you know. And this 3rd one will be in that ilk, but there's a ton of material I couldn't put in Bringing Back the Wild, and more is coming in, like Scotland, and looking at the different models, you know, human-wildlife conflict in Scotland. I normally, you know, like I mentioned about this article that I'm writing, I bet you do too, but most folks would think of human-wildlife conflict as being something where somebody's getting trampled by an elephant or eaten by a lion, or their livestock's being taken out or whatever. But you have the same kinds of human-wildlife conflict that impact humans, not life-threatening, but rather threatening for example, the forestry industry. And so there's all of these different things, that nuances and big issues that, I'll be perfectly honest, I run across and I didn't know anything about them. And I'm figuring that a lot of folks don't know about them. A lot of hunters, and a lot of non-hunters don't know about the fact that hunters are mediating these, and we're giving them solutions through our hunting. And so that's what it's going to be about, probably. Or not probably. That's what I'm working on right now. I've gotten the chapter outline, and then it's going to change like crazy, and you're going to see it, and you're going to tell me it's terrible like you always do, and then I'm going to have to move on.
I don't think I've ever told you anything was terrible, except for maybe one drink that you prepared for me at about 4 o'clock in one morning, kind of thing.
That
was marginal, but
yeah, we've had way too much fun occasionally. So tell me, can I ask you a question? I know you're interviewing me. Tell me about this multi-country hunt with Scandinavian pro hunters. How's that going to work? How many of y'all are going, and how do you take firearms? You know, how does that work?
This particular hunt is something that Stefan and Sophia Bankston and I have been working on for a while. And basically what it is a 3-nations hunt. We'll fly into Sweden, go to Poland from there. They'll have made all their arrangements as far as flights and everything, and then end up in England. And in each place we'll stay like a couple of 3 days, hunt, and it is a couple's deal to where husband and wife or however, that wants to go can go, and they can both hunt. One can hunt. We're staying at some really cool places that they have set up over, that they've used in some of these countries in the past for other hunts. And, basically what we were looking for is something where we could come up with a very unique hunt that would be fun, where we could have couples involved, and also, of course, raise money for the DSC Foundation. We've got Mark and Carol Little, actually, from DSC, bought the hunt that we auctioned off, but we've got I think 4 or 5 other couples that are going as well, too, who love to hunt. They've arranged for a sizable bus, to where we don't have to fly to get from one place to the next. And, I'm really looking forward to it, because they're each, even though I'll be hunting and Marianne and whoever else will be out looking, at all kinds of historical type things in country and all that. But there's also time built in for even the guys who are hunting, or in Mark and Carol's situation. I think they're either both hunting, or one's hunting one day, and then the other one's hunting the other day. But it's going to be an opportunity to really experience. They've got it set up to where we'll be eating local foods prepared by, of course, in those places that we're staying. So it's going to be kind of a cultural thing in a way, but at the same time, it'll get us into 3 different countries that are relatively easy to get into. Now, you mentioned firearms. We're not, much as I like taking my own guns where I can, none of us are taking a firearm on this one because of the multi-nation thing that we're going through, and probably end up having to fly part of the time on one of the British Airlines as well, too, which kind of really makes it possible. You can take guns, but it makes it not very much fun. So
I get it.
Stephan and Sophia and the people whose properties we're hunting on, they have guns that we'll be able to utilize, and so we don't have to take our own guns. But it's going to be I can't remember the number of days. I want to say it's like a 10 or 12 day trip from the time that we get there to the time that we get back. But we'll be covering a lot of ground, and in every instance, we'll be hunting. I'm going to try to shoot at least one roe deer in each of the places that we go, and in realizing too that, I've shot some real nice roe deer in the past. I will shoot the first legal one that I see, because and I may save the capes on them as well too, because depending on the color variation. I'm sitting here in my office right now. I'm looking at a roe deer from Spain and one from Sweden, and the one from Spain is a very grayish deer, while the other one is a rare reddish looking, kind of deer. Same deer species, of course. But so anyway, that's what it's all about. That trip's going to take place, I think, as I recall, the first week or so of May in 2026, and that the reason for then is because those in the countries that we'll be going to, their roe deer season opens May 1. Right. And again, that corresponds with those bucks being in hard antler.
And, the thing about it is, you talk about covering a lot of ground, but boy, it's easy to get around in Europe.
Oh, yes.
And it's real cheap too in terms of flights. Francis has done, and I have done this for years, for me to speak at universities and teach short courses. Right. And darn, their airline, compared to us with the same distances flown, you're talking about maybe, a lot of times, at least in the past, 100 euros or 150 euros to where, the distance is Georgia to Seattle, or to Washington, and right, where we would have been paying $600 or $700 or something. So, but it also is just real fast. So you can cover an awful lot of ground real quick.
Well, the way I got it figured, we'll cover an area about the size of Texas when it's all said and done. I was looking at, we're flying to Sweden, and then go to Poland, and then go to England, and it's not that huge a distance between the two, those places, but
remember what our friend in England told us one time when she said, it's a long way. It was like 150 miles. It's a long way, that we're going to be traveling today. And Francis looked at her and said, could drive 150 miles in our sleep. And she said, well, that's true. 150 miles is short for y'all, but 150 years is a very short time period for us. So
well, and they are absolutely correct. I remember hunting in Austria several years ago and walking into this stone building, and in Roman numerals on the inside was 12. And so I said, is this the 12th building? And the lady who we were hunting with just started laughing. She goes, no, that was the year. I go,
BC or AD?
oh,
yeah, that's right. Well, and that makes it, once again, such a rich experience. But anyway, yeah. One other thing I wanted to mention is that I didn't realize is that I was looking at when I was hunting in Scotland, the real sweet thing was, too, with the roebuck and the Sika, they had changed into their winter coats.
Yes.
So the Sika in the summer, you would have seen this, and I'd forgotten, to be perfectly honest. Sika in the summer is reddish with white spots. I mean, it looked like a fawn, right? And the Sika I shot had just a little tiny piece of red on his rump of hairs that had not changed over, but he was charcoal color. And then the roebuck was the same way. He had switched over, and that was one of the reasons that, I mean, the Sika in the summer must be beautiful, but, with the spots and the red and all that.
Oh,
but I just wanted to mention that biologically, I hadn't even thought about the fact that these animals had a serious pelage, coat color change, between seasons. I hadn't even thought about it. So I wonder if that's not what you're looking at with your roebuck. Maybe it's it may just be genetic.
It very well may be. I'm trying to remember. I shot the deer in Spain. Can't even remember what time of the year it was when I shot the others right now. But the ones in Spain, I shot like I think their season there in like April 1 or something like that. And actually, that when I hunted there, my intentions were to hunt for like 3 or 4 days. And we had got hit by a horrible snowstorm that drove us out of the mountains. And thankfully, I'd taken a couple of them. So there was good reason for those deer to be in a winter coat at that point. Otherwise, I don't think they survived. On another podcast, I want to come back and visit with you a little bit more about roe deer and some of the unique things about roe deer and some of the things like you were talking about just now that are probably some kind of genetic adaptations to terrain, habitat, vegetation, and those kind of things where you do see these color changes, even, with whitetail deer in North America as well, too. I want to go back to your book because I know you got to go take care of some business here in just a little bit. And tell me a little bit more or let's talk about how people can get Bringing Back the Wild or Bringing Back the Lions, either one, because, it's not that long between now and Christmas. And these are just fantastic Christmas books. I mean, if anybody likes a book, even if they don't like a book, I know they're going to like these two, particularly the latter one, if they enjoy any kind of hunting as well. But
I appreciate that, and so they can reach both. If they want a signed copy, they can. There's a couple of ways they can be able to. Then they can go to my website at MikeArnoldOutdoors.com, and there are big old buttons on there, and they can press one or both, for those books, and that way they can get a signed copy. I will say that if they're, I will be at DSC and I will be at SCI, and so the conventions, and I will have copies and will be signing those. I'm probably going to be in Mark Haldane's booth. Perfect. I will be part of the time, but if they want a signed copy for Christmas, they ought to go on to my website, go ahead and get that done. And that way, I'll get that to them. I get them right out to them, signed to them. And, and I apologize for my handwriting right now. I've got my mother's handwriting. And,
I'm only laughing because I can't read my own.
But now, if they don't, if they're saying, I don't need a signed copy, they can go to Amazon. They can go to Barnes & Noble. They can go to their local bookstore. and order it. They can do either one or both of those, and they can get them in that way. In fact, I have listeners in South Africa and Zimbabwe and places. The books are there. My Bring Back the Lions, anyway, is there as well.
Fantastic.
Bringing Back the Wild came out in June. You'd asked me about that. It came out in June, and it is selling real well. So is Bring Back the Lions. It's really doing well right now too, which is really sweet of folks to keep buying them. But it came out in June, and it covers, as Larry knows, because there's a quote on it from him on the cover. But it covers all over the world, where in terms of conservation efforts, community outreach efforts, but also hunting adventures. I wanted it to be based around hunting adventures. What I told my editor of the book, the person that worked on it for me, besides Larry and others, was Diana Rupp. She asked me, "What's your vision?" And I said, when I was growing up, I loved reading articles and books by Jack O'Connor and these sorts of folks. I said, I'll never write as well as they do, but I would love to have that kind of a story for folks, that kind of an adventure, just really get into our bloodstream. So that's what those articles do, but they also reflect what hunters are doing for the cultures around them and the habitats around them and all that sort of thing. I can't get away from geeking out occasionally as a scientist as well, and tell them a little bit of the biology of things. So it's a mixture of all that put together. Bringing Back the Wild it goes all the way from Yucatan to Sweden to British Columbia, a bunch of places in Africa and all England and all over the place. So it's a more of a worldwide kind of view.
It is absolutely fantastic. And what I love about what you do is you educate while you're entertaining people. I got a feeling there's a bunch of folks that will read that book and then later on go, man, I learned about this, and they go, oh yeah, it was in Bringing Back the Wild. Dr. Mike Arnold wrote about this. And so to me, you almost use that hunting as kind of a hook, if you will, but you do that in such an absolutely fantastic combination of entertaining and education. And again, I think that's one of the reasons that you are going to be you are now the Educator of the Year for DSC Foundation for 2026. And want to invite everybody too, while we're thinking about it, to come to the convention. DSC convention will again be in Atlanta at the World Congress Center there, and the dates are in February. And it's going to be an absolutely great time, and they can learn more about that by going to DSC's website, which is www.bigame.org. DSC Foundation, they can go to www.dscf.org. Mike, thank you so much for being with me around the campfire. We've got to figure out another way to get together here for too very long, maybe up on the Choctaw. I hear rumblings that somebody's interested in a mule-footed hog, and we're going to see if we can't get that set up sometime in the not too very distant future. And you can't come unless I'm going to get to be there. So,
amen. Frances told me the same darn thing, so she's going to be there
give her
too.
a hug for me.
I sure will.
Mike, thank you so very much. And again, if people want to learn more about Dr. Mike Arnold, learn more about the fabulous books that he does, you can go to MikeArnoldOutdoors.com. So thank you much, ladies and gentlemen. I look forward to seeing everybody right here, down here, wherever you might be, on the next campfire, which will be happening next week. And Dr. Mike Arnold, thank you again, and I can't wait to share a real one with you here before too very long.
Thank you, Larry.
DSC's Campfires with Larry Weishuhn has also been brought to you by The Crown Bar in LaGrange, Texas, the Texas Wildlife Association, Double Nickel Taxidermy, and Burnham Brothers Game Calls.